thoughtfulness transcends age. There is no age or experience level where we would not or should not value thoughtfulness. So I think that could be the 18-year-old, it could be the 64-year-old about to retire. Everybody should value thoughtfulness. So what a great opportunity if you're a senior in college, a young professional in the first 5 to 8 years of your career, to really start to think about, how do I become a more thoughtful leader?
This is the Leadership Foundry podcast. I'm your co-host this week, Brandon Smith. Today, I get the pleasure to not only reintroduce someone that doesn't need an introduction, but also talk about his most recent and latest and greatest book. My business partner and co-founder of the Leadership Foundry, Randy Hain. Randy, so good to have you on the show again, my friend.
Always great to spend time with you, Brandon Smith.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited. And I'm holding your 11th book. I mean, I've done 2. I've got a lot of catching up to do. And this one is, as all of them are, a wonderful gift and masterpiece. So becoming a more thoughtful leader, we want to spend some time on this show today talking about this, because not only are there some really, as always, practical nuggets and tools in the book, but would love to get your thoughts on what prompted you to write the book. And I've got a few relevant scenarios that really tie into what we as leaders might be feeling today.
Sure.
And I want your help connecting it to this book, and I know you'll be able to do it masterfully. So
Sure.
before we jump into my questions for you today, let's start with this book. What prompted you to do number 11, and what makes this book so different from maybe your other books?
No, thanks. I'm grateful we're having this conversation. So, the book is interesting. Like with most of the books I've been writing over the last 5 or 6 years, I typically don't start out with the title and theme necessarily concretely fixed in my mind. I usually just blog and write about things that are interesting to me during the course of a year. And this particular book, I had gathered a lot of material. I'd done a lot of writing, just when I'm in the mood to write. And I look back over that year's worth of material, and it struck me that there was a very interesting and consistent theme, that I was challenging my readers to learn new things. So the book has 20 new topics that you've not seen from me before. But I'm challenging the reader to be thoughtful about your own growth. So I want you to read this, apply it, make it work for you. So make it practical for you, and work on those things. But I'm also challenging you to be thoughtful about the people around you. So how do you be thoughtful about your own growth, but also the growth of those around you? So the title just sort of came out of this twin challenge of being thoughtful about your growth, the growth of others. And I just love how it came together. It was a fun book to write, but I'm really grateful, I think, for how people are receiving this. People are looking in the mirror, but I think they're also feeling well equipped to go out and help others around them. So that was the thought process.
Beautiful. Well, you mentioned thoughtful several times because naturally it's in the title of the book.
Yeah.
And you talked about being thoughtful about your own growth, but thoughtful about the people around you. It seems like these two activities, thoughtful about my own growth, thoughtful about the people around me, not as common as they probably should be today. Say a little bit more about that. Do you see this as kind of a real void or a gap or an opportunity that we need to be stepping maybe back into, that maybe we've stepped away from for a little while?
Well, because you and I are both executive coaches, and we do leadership consulting, we are in that world with senior leaders, senior men and women every day, engaging with them. And I think we would both have a very similar list of observations. Most of the leaders I work with are very focused on getting things done, achieving their goals. They're up to their eyeballs in really interesting work, great work. They've got busy family lives. They're just very oriented towards action. And listen, that is how the world runs, and that's how most people think. I find, though, that with my writing, and I think it's been culminating over the last several years, and this book may be the apex of that thinking, is that it strikes me that we all probably need to embrace thoughtful leadership. No, I didn't coin the term or phrase, it's been out there for a while. But when I think about thoughtful leadership, it's take a break, take a pause, look in the mirror, think about how you are doing as a leader. Could I get better? Could I grow? What are the obstacles between me and success? So there's an inward manifestation of thoughtfulness that I think all of us would agree is important. We all need to be growing and developing. But I think there's this other sort of manifestation that is external, where we say, okay, I've learned this thing that Randy has taught me or Brandon has taught me, but now I want to be very committed to engaging with and teaching those around me what I've learned. And this is what really makes a great thoughtful leader. It's that leader that's always thinking about those around them, developing those people in their circle of influence. So for me, thoughtful leadership is where I have been growing towards for many years. It's what I teach and coach my clients on. And this book, again, seems to be just a manifestation of that thinking. So I hope I answered your question, but that's how I view it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so Randy, we're moving into as we're recording this, the election has not been completed. So we're in the election cycle or season, not necessarily a fun time, I think, for us. And then we've got the end of the year, and there's a lot of challenges around the end of the year. But there's also an opportunity to give this book as a gift. So I'm going to do something a little different than I normally do when I interview you about your books. I'm going to throw out some real scenarios and situations that I see with clients and others that I work with. And I would love to get your thoughts on how this book might help that individual in that particular situation.
Sure.
So here's my first scenario. This was a conversation I was having yesterday with one of my clients about an individual in his company that I know very well. And their business hasn't performed at the level they were hoping going into the year. I think that's most, if not all businesses. Most businesses haven't hit their numbers in 2024 that they had projected. Hasn't been a great economy in that way. And so there's a lot of stress. And he said this particular leader, it's like the last 4 months, they've just been a different person. Yep. They're not doing their one-on-ones. They're being shorter. They're making snap decisions. In fact, he came into a meeting because he had heard some rumors that were being spread about my particular client's department. And he came in and just kind of launched into my client in this department. Okay. So my question to you is this. With a leader that's maybe under a lot of stress, really exhibiting their stress behavior, how might this book help them reset as we start to move into 2025?
Okay, that's a great question, and I want to try my very best to be succinct in my answer because I could go a lot of different ways with this. I think we start with a little humor and just recognize that handing a book to a stressed out leader and saying this will fix your problems is the worst thing we could do. Hey, why don't you spend all this extra time you don't have and read this book? I'm sure it's going to be enlightening. So I probably would be mindful of not just saying go read something. I would, though, remind all the listeners to this show, and maybe this particular person you're talking about, that this book, like all my books, is really written for the busy leader. I've got that mindset when I write. So my chapters are 5-minute chapters with very clear best practices. This is the issue. This is what you can do about it. Go forth and make it happen. And I challenge you with very specific accountability at the end of the chapter. So if I were to encounter this leader, I would say, hey, I do have a book for you, but what I'd like you to do is really go through the table of contents and let's pick out a couple of the particular topics that would be relevant. And then what I'd love for you to do is after you read one or two of these, digest it. And then I want to have a one-on-one with you next week and talk about what you may have gleaned from this. And I really want to go on this journey with you. So this book that I want to give you, this Becoming a Thoughtful Leader book, there's so much in there that can help. I want you to pick one or two things and then let me be your Sherpa, your guide. I'm going to go with you on this journey. Let's learn together. But I really want to see if this creates some great conversations you and I can have to help you be effective and feel better and calmer about what you're doing. 2 chapters that come to mind. there's a chapter called aspirational versus actual priorities, because it strikes me that this leader's got his priorities way out of whack. And that particular chapter is all about how do you take that aspirational list of priorities, the things that we all think we want to do, should do, could do, and instead of the reality of just going to work and doing all the work stuff first, how do we help this leader rethink how they plan their day and prioritize? So that's a very useful chapter on getting time management under control. I have another chapter on accountability. In fact, I've got two chapters on accountability that come at it very differently that could really help this leader start to rethink how he holds himself and those people around him accountable. So I think going back to my point, Brandon, I would give the book with the sort of the lead in. I'm going to give this to you as a tool. I'm going to help you use this. We're going to do it together. Let's talk next week after you've digested a chapter or two. That's my thought.
Beautiful. And what I really appreciate about the style you wrote this book and some of your other books is it's got such a just-in-time element to it. You
Yeah.
can really enter into the book in any place. If I really need this piece on accountability, I can read it almost as a daily reflection or meditation. Like I can read it that way, or I can
Yes.
pull another piece. The books I've written have more of a linear feel. So sometimes I'll talk to my clients and I'll say, and my books aren't long, but I'll say, have you read it? They're like, no, I'm still working through it. It's been 4 months, just
Yeah.
because they don't have the time. And so I love that you've got it so accessible for a situation like that. And for a leader like that, it can help them reflect, reset in a thoughtful way about how they want to operate. Okay. Sorry.
I don't say this lightly, Brandon, because I think I have mild ADD. Most of the people I encounter, to me, seem to have there's a lot of ADD out there, and a lot of just, we're looking at multiple different things, trying to get them done every day. So the ability to jump into a book in chapter 17 and get value, and then jump in chapter 9, I write that way on purpose because, quite frankly, that's how the people that I encounter every day are thinking.
We live in a very noisy world, my friend, as you and I both know.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so are you ready for another scenario?
You've got my attention. I'm excited.
Okay, so now let's take another scenario of leaders, and you and I have both experienced this year. And again, folks, I'm not making any political statement. It's just Randy and my experience. A lot of our businesses that we work with, and companies and organizations, this hasn't been a stellar year. I haven't met one of my organizations that actually hit their numbers that they had targeted for this year.
Mhm.
So as a result, layoffs sometimes are part of the process of resetting.
Yes.
And there are leaders that Randy and I both work with that are looking for the next thing. They're in transition. And it's because of the election, there's almost this pause in hiring right now. So they're sitting at home, kind of on the bench, ready to get back in the game. And it's probably not going to happen until 2025, probably. So for leaders that are in transition, how might this book benefit them?
So, I think you and I both would agree, Brandon, that periods of transition are wonderful opportunities to make investments. One of those investments can be a self-investment. So if you are on the bench, as Brandon described, if you're, in between opportunities, what a great opportunity to not simply race into the next thing. Now, I have all the respect in the world for financial pressures. You may not feel that you've got the ability just to, spend time on the mountaintop investing in yourself. I understand that. But because a job search is typically, in my anecdotal experience, going to take 4 to 6 months. That is typical, and it's just what I've seen for most of my career. If that is true, and I believe it is, you're going to have more time than you've had in a long time to not just chase the next role, but to think about how you're going to show up in the next role. How am I going to be a different leader, a better leader? How will I not only be better equipped to serve the people around me, but is this book one of those tools that can help me also invest better in my people? How can I really become a developer of people? So this book, if you're on the bench, if you're in between roles, is quite frankly, it's ideal. I think any good leadership book right now, not just mine or Brandon's, but others, could be a benefit to you right now. But if you're buying my book, and you're in transition, I think it's going to force you to look in the mirror, really evaluate, okay, where have I been? Where am I going? In fact, there's one chapter in the book where I was giving advice to a fellow executive, executive friend of mine who had been in transition for about 4 months, was getting very antsy and anxious about his next opportunity. And he was really just kind of worried about, are my priorities straight? Am I thinking about this the right way? So I wrote a chapter about helping him to restore his confidence, getting him to really be grateful for the great blessings in his life, his faith, his family, all the things that were going well. So there's a chapter in there that might help you reorient your thinking about what good has come out of my transition. And I help my friend, the senior leader, really reevaluate the great things that had come out of this respite from the corporate storm he had been in for most of his life. So Brandon, that's how I would address it. I don't know if that resonates with you, but that's how I view it.
I love that, Randy. And I love the fact that you honor it's a stressful, anxiety producing season.
Yes.
And it's also a great opportunity to reset habits and approaches. And
Yes.
this book can be part of that to create more of a discipline. So when you go into the next thing, you've already kind of got those grooves established. And
Yes.
I want to wake up this way with this kind of mindset. I want to approach developing my people this way. I want to approach my own growth this way.
Yes.
So if we can suspend our anxiety at least a little bit or tamper it down, this could be a great way to really invest in yourself and get you ready for the next role.
You and I talk a lot about frameworks, mental frameworks and mindsets. We're always talking about that on the show with clients, with others. And one of the things that I really admire in certain leaders that I encounter is when a leader has the mindset and the mental framework of the continuous learner, someone that is always eager to learn and grow. I don't know about you, but I won't state my age on air, but I will tell you that I don't care how old I am or how old I'll be in the future. I always want to be someone who's learning. I want to be learning new things and trying new things. So if you are at a certain stage of your career and you feel like, I've learned everything I can, there's nothing else you can teach me, I would pull back from that and say, you know what, maybe this period on the bench is a great time for me to go out and figure out what I don't know. And maybe this book and other books can help you.
Beautiful. Okay, Randy, I've got one final scenario for you.
Okay.
All right. So we've talked about the busy executive that's stressed out trying to hit the final numbers of 2024. We've talked about the executive that might be on the bench and looking for the next opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
How about the young leader?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got the leader maybe early in their career, perhaps in their 20s, but they're early in their career and they're wanting to set themselves up for success. They're wanting to stand out. They're wanting to, not only do a good job at their work, but make a name for themselves and frankly, just be a good kind of colleague and
Yes.
in the workplace. How might this book be an excellent resource for the young professional?
So I love that question. I love it. So I want to start by making sort of an overarching statement. Thoughtfulness transcends age. There is no age or experience level where we would not or should not value thoughtfulness. So I think that could be the 18-year-old, it could be the 64-year-old about to retire. Everybody should value thoughtfulness. So what a great opportunity if you're a senior in college, a young professional in the first 5 to 8 years of your career, to really start to think about, how do I become a more thoughtful leader? And one of the things about this book that I was really sort of pleased with and proud of is so many of the chapters start with me sharing my experiences or the experiences of other leaders, going back to maybe the beginning of our career. Brandon, I'll give you an example. The very first chapter of the book is titled Confessions of a High-Functioning Introvert. First chapter. Well, I tell you about my struggles with being a high-functioning introvert my whole life. And I go back to, not really understanding that very well when I was a young leader and having to deal with it and figure it out. and the journey that I went on to become more comfortable in my own skin as a high functioning introvert. Well, I bet there are 20 somethings right now wondering, why do I not enjoy happy hour? Why is networking so hard for me? Why is this social stuff just not comfortable? Well, that chapter can help you if you're 20, 40, 60, or 70. It doesn't matter. So I think because the book does really dive into the story, the journey, and all of us started out exactly where our younger listeners are right now, this book will be of value to you.
Okay. So as you were talking, it immediately hit me. I'm going to do a little plug here. This would be an amazing book for a manager to buy for each of her or his team members and do exactly what you said. Pick out a chapter. We can talk about it. Almost turn it into a little book club because it benefits everyone. It's interesting. It benefits everybody and everybody differently.
Yes.
Based on where they are in their career, based on where they are in season of life, and possible stressors in their life. They can really use it in so many different ways. So do you have any other particular recommendations on how this book might be helpful, or any other particular situation that you find that this book might also plug into really easily?
Yeah, it's always uncomfortable for an author to talk about, ways you can use the book, but I will give you some anecdotes because I've just been overwhelmed and humbled by all the different ways that people are telling me that they find value in the book, but how they're using it. So thank you for bringing that up, and I'll kind of go down that path a bit. So this coming Tuesday and the following Tuesday, I'm going to be traveling to Samford University, where I'm on the board of the business school, and plug for Samford University, where my son went to school. But I get to talk to students in the business school, and I plan to give every single one of them a copy of the book and talk about thoughtful leadership. So investing in students and young professionals and putting the book in their hand is something that I'm very committed to doing, to the conversation we just had a minute ago. Two other ways, and you mentioned one of them, that I'm starting to hear a lot of anecdotal evidence about how people are using it, is it's becoming very popular as a book of the month selection. Leaders are buying it. They're getting coffee and learns and lunch and learns where they talk about the book, and I'm so grateful for that. And I've got dozens of examples of that. The other thing that's been very intriguing, and this was the same thing that happened with my 2021 book, Essential Wisdom for Leaders of Every Generation. This book is being purchased by the case. And leaders are buying it for all the people leaders and aspiring leaders and high potentials in their organization, and doing what you just said. They're giving it to them. They're saying, this is an investment in you. Hey, next time I see you, I want to hear, what you're learning. I want to have a one-on-one and talk about, what you've picked up from the book. So I think the Book of the Month Club, I think buying it in bulk and sharing it with your colleagues, and then giving the book. Maybe you're listening to this and you've got access to students or young professionals, and you want to do a very noble thing. Maybe give the copy of the book to them and just say, here's an investment in you, and I hope this helps you. All kinds of ways that people are using the book. But I'll tell you what my favorite is, and it's the one that we talked about earlier with the stressed out leader that you talked about. It's that one person in your circle that really wants to grow, needs to grow. They may be struggling. And the book is given as a gift, but you're also offering your time to go with them on the journey. Hey, I read this book, or I like this book. I want you to read it. Let's get together next week, have a cup of coffee, and talk more about it. I love when leaders embrace the coaching side of their leadership. I think all leaders should. And this book is an amazing tool, I think, to foster, accelerate, to invest in those coaching conversations. So hope I answered your question, but those are some of the things that I would encourage us to do. And I'm just kind of piggybacking on what you said.
Well, Randy, again, my friend, another masterpiece, becoming a more thoughtful leader. So here's my plug. I would say to everyone listening, we're ending 2024, moving into 2025. Great opportunity to not only retool for yourself, but retool those closest to you. Maybe it's your colleagues or members of your team or your kiddos at home. or maybe you're good friends. So I would strongly encourage everyone listening to this, go out and buy a copy or multiple copies or a case of this book and purchase it on Amazon, other places you might like to purchase books, but Amazon's an easy starting place. And buy this for those around you, because it's a great way to help meet people where they're at and get them ready for a better year. And as we always say here at the Leadership Foundry, it's all about what are some practical things we can start doing today to help ourselves and our teams thrive tomorrow. And in this case, tomorrow being 2025.